What if you could unlock the secrets of creating catchy electronic music in any genre? Well, you'd probably be able to make music that you love and that would have an emotional connection with other people. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to recreate a hit by Calvin Harris and uncover the 5 secrets of catchy music that you can start applying in your music today. We're going to be going step by step into how to create a catchy rhythm, how to create an emotional chord progression, and a catchy melody that works perfectly with it. Once you understand what I'm going to show you in this video, you too can achieve things like our accelerator students who get supported by the likes of Tiesto, David Guetta, Armin van Buuren, and a whole host of A-list DJs and artists. As usual, you can download this project file, all the samples and presets completely free. So without further ado, let's hop into the door and get it done. Okay, let's get to it. I've got so much to show you today, and I want to actually pick apart why this stuff works as well, so you can take the fundamentals and apply it to any genre of music. But the first thing we want to do is get the tempo in there. So I'm going to do this for 136 BPM, so we can kind of get that 2000s trance pop that we're going for. But as I said, this is going to work for any genre, and I've got so much good stuff to show you today, so I'm going to get straight to it. First thing we need to do after that is get a kick drum in there. Now, it really helps to have just a small selection of kick drums that you can rely upon. So I'm going to give you my personal kick drum collection. You can download that for free using the link below, and it's going to really help you start any track in a strong way. Kick on every beat, boom, 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 want you in my room. There we go, and I want this to be peaking at -12, and it is. That's lovely, because we don't want to run into clipping issues on the master chain. That's something that a lot of producers do. They'll push everything to 0, and there are techniques you can use to do that, but I've just found that this will give you a more dynamic mix overall if you're not pushing it to 0 at the beginning. Right, enough of that. Let's get onto the chord progression, because the chords, my pedigree chums, are going to inform everything else harmonic in the track and melodic. So our bass line, our synth stabs, our guitar riffs, which we're going to get to very shortly, and the vocals as well. So the beauty of modern DAWs, one of the beauties, is that you can just use scale mode. So all of this business can be quite confusing, and I'm going to show you how you can make your life a lot easier. And the way you can do that is basically select a scale template, which is the equivalent of using those inflatable buffers in the bowling alley. Not that I would ever use anything like that, of course. So if we go into this chord progression clip, I'm going to hit scale mode. I'm going to choose E minor because that is the key of the original track. And then you can see these purple notes light up. And if we hit scale, boom, it's basically only showing the notes from within that scale. So it's really hard to hit a wrong note. And once we've done that, we need to get these chords in. Now, the easiest way to write chords is to get the root note of each chord first in a way that sounds good to you. And pretty much every dance track is just made of 3 or 4 chords. Like, people way overcomplicate their chord progressions because they think that's what's going to make their music sound really super cool. But it's not. You know, if someone like Calvin Harris can make multiple tracks that just smash the charts with 3 or 4 chords in it, it's okay if you do it too. So I'm going to go for well, E would be the root note of the scale, but actually I'm going to start the chord progression on a C. So that would be the 6th chord, because if we count up from E, and this is going a bit into music theory, and I've got something to help you with music theory below as well. But if we count up from the root note of the scale, because E minor, that's the 1st note, then we've got 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. So the C is the 6th position in that scale. And then we're going to go down to the root, then we're going to go to that and there. So we've got these 4 chords, they're going to go like, not a complicated progression. And now we want to build those out into the progression. And I'm going to show you something using the held chord technique. I don't know if that's something that, in fact, I definitely coined that phrase, but it makes chords sound amazing. So here's how you do it. First, build out the normal triads. So just skip a note each time. Make these little blue hamburgers. Tastier than they sound. So we're skipping a note each time, but this only works if you've got scale mode selected. Otherwise, you're going to be hitting random notes like this. So little blue burgers come to me. And tasty beats. So they sound like this. What are you talking about, Will? So there's standard triads. Now I'm going to show you this held chord technique. So sometimes that can sound a bit boring, and really held chords is just another way of saying chord inversions. So we're going to use this chord and basically just hold it on this note. So this is now a 7th. So you can hear I'm just trying to hold that note at the top. Now, it doesn't always work. Sometimes this root note won't gel with these ones, but it's worth trying if you want to get a bit more tension in your progression. And for the last one, I'm going to go up to that position. So now our 4 chords are thus. Oh, instant emotions. So you can see we've just held that chord across and it makes them all sound more gelled together as well. Boom, magic list. What have we got for me? I'm going to get into the flow of this now. Right, bass line. Let's get the bass line in there. 2 things I want to show you today with the bass line. I'm going to show you 2 layers and I'm going to show you how to layer drums as well. So stick with me for that. But the bass line is going to be split into 2 different instruments. And the first is going to be the sub bass. Now, this is because we've just got more control if we do that. So let's have this lower one be sub bass. And then this middle one is going to be a classic sound that you're going to recognize as well from Robin S. Show Me Love. I've met Stonebridge a couple of times, actually. He's the one that kind of coins that. So now let's get the wavetable in there. Actually, I'm going to use an operator for this sub bass so we can get it nice and clean. We're just going for a sine wave. And first thing I would do is just draw in the rhythm that's going to dance around the kick drum, just on the root note of the track. It's all about splitting things into easier kind of techniques. So the root note of the track is the E. Let's take this down a bit in volume. And let's play the kick drum and just get it so this rhythm bounces around the kick drum. And you'll notice it doesn't really sound like a bass at the moment because it's a bit higher up in the register. There's a reason for that, which I'll show you. I don't know if this is the exact rhythm from the original. So, nice and simple. That's the rhythm we're going to use. And you can hear it syncopating and dancing around that kick drum. If you can get something to groove with just the kick and the bass, it's a good start to a track. So now I'm going to get in these notes. That's the C, the E, the G, and the A, because you want your bass line to be following the root note of each of those chords as well. So again, start with the C, go down to the E, and then A. So at the moment, it sounds like this. I'm feeling that now already. This last chord though, ooh, feels. So what I'm going to do is now take this down a couple of octaves. And the reason I write the bass line in a higher register, that is an octave or 2 above where it's going to end up, is easier to hear which pitches those bass notes are hitting, because it can get a bit hard to hear the changes in pitch when it's down low. But if you get it wrong, you'll know about it in final mix. Cool. Hear how that bass drum's kind of dancing around that bass line, or rather the other way around. Cool. Okay, let's get to that second bass though. And this is going to be that organ bass that I told you. I'm going to use exactly the same notes, but for this, I'm going to use a sample. Now, if you've got the Chord M1 plugin, that's really great, but I wanted to do this just with Ableton devices, so everyone who's got Ableton can use it, but you can follow along really with any synth. However, I'm going to get, boom, a bass sample in this. Oh, in fact, let's have that vinyl. We're going to touch upon this later, so I'm just going to grab that now, pique your interest, and then I'm going to get that bass. So let's go to the sample pack. So there we go. That is a sample of the M1 organ bass. And if I drag it into a MIDI channel, hopefully it's going to be put immediately into a sampler. Cool. So it now sounds like this. But it's too low, so I'm going to put that up a couple of octaves. So you get that classic sound. Now the trouble is, our sub bass and this bass are going to kind of clash with each other. So the way I'm going to get around that is to take out the low end of this organ bass. Everything under about 120 Hertz. So we're just looking for that tonality up there. And now with our sub bass, we've still got the low end, but now I can balance them independently. So I want that sub bass to be averaging about -20, because I know that's going to work with the kick drum. And this works across genre. I've tried it literally hundreds of times, and that's kind of one of the methodologies we use in the accelerator as well. So it already sounds great. Let's add a little bit of reverb to that. Just a tiny bit. Okay, boom, next on the magic list is the rest of the drums. I haven't done that yet, have I? Okay, we need to get those drums in there, so I'm going to go for a nice short, sharp clap, and then we're going to layer up some loops as well, which is going to be really important. But I like to get in the core drums first. So by the core drums, I mean the kick, the main clap or snare, the main open hat position. Yeah, that sounds all right. I'll get it in, and then I might change it afterwards. Oh, I like that one actually. It's a bit chunkier. So let's program it in. Every other kick position, that's where the snare goes. And then just duplicate that. So it's like this. And we'll bring it down a bit. I'm going to actually transpose that slightly, because I wanted it a bit higher and snappier. Cool, that sounds good. Next thing we want to do is get the main hat in there, and there's nothing like the classic hat sounds and the classic drum sound. So I'm going to use a 909 open hat, which a lot of you will recognize. There we go. You know, it really cuts through the mix. It really sounds great. I'm going to take out a bit of the low end because it's quite a naughty sample. It's a bit harsh at the moment, but that harshness can actually help it cut through the mix. But we want to tone it down a bit. You can hear it's really quite long, so I'm just going to tighten this up. And the easiest way to do it is just shorten the sample. And then you can tweak that, fade out. And you get a much kind of tighter sound. Okay, next thing on the magic list is adding those drum layers. Now, we can do that, but actually I want to get the synth stabs in there first because I think you're really going to enjoy these. And I'm going to do this to add some real body to the track now, because we're not actually going to use this piano. We could do, but we're not going to. We're just going to use it as the template upon which we can build everything else. So let's color this cyan, the natural color of synths, as you all know. And then we are going to use the wavetable for this. I'm going to show you a 303 later as well. That's going to be fun. But let's get the ADSR shape first and the general kind of plucky shape. I'm going to use a saw wave. I'm going to show you how to do, it's a bit like a dead mouse stab, I guess, or a dead mouse pluck. Now, what I wanted to show you with this, the rhythm of this is going to be exactly the same as the bass line. And the reason we're doing that is because it's really going to cement and make it a very strong syncopated rhythm. Rather than having loads of different rhythms bouncing around each other, it's good not to overcomplicate things, especially when it comes to this more poppy style. So we can just copy and paste those notes in. Let's go sub bass, just going to copy them all. And I'm going to use this as the rhythm template really for our chords. So let's move this up a couple of octaves. And we're just going to use these chords, but follow the rhythm of the bass line. This is the rhythm of the bass line. Let's just copy that. Okay, so when all's said and done, this is the rhythm and the chords that we've got with our chord synth, or synth stab. So nice, and I'm going to drop that little note down at the end there to loop background. And then what we're going to do is get this more plucky. So I'm going to go and use the filter for this and add a filter envelope. So it's going to be like this. So now we've got that plucky sound. Add some unison for some width. Instantly yes. So nice. I'm just going to leave that because it sounds so good. I want some of them to be slightly longer than the others though, so I am going to use a bit of sustain. And some of them we can actually make even shorter, like this. If you don't have a lot of release on the amplitude, you can kind of dial back the length of the MIDI note a bit, like this. And this stuff really matters because this is all of part what creates the groove. So these ones are significantly shorter. See the difference or hear the difference? So let's just copy that same length there as well. There we go. And then for the last one, but then these notes will put up. Cool. So now we've got that. I'm just going to add a little bit of reverb. Oh, okay, next thing I want to do is start a bit of arrangement after we've layered up these drums. So this is how I like to work with loops. The important thing is to know that whenever you're using drums, that's the thing that's going to kind of age your track. So if you're using the wrong drum sounds for your genre, it's going to make it sound like it's not from your genre or it's dated or whatever. Now in this instance, we actually want it to sound a bit dated because we want that early 2000s, late 90s sound. So I'm going to use older loops. And I want to get a particular, vibe to the track. So that's what I'm going to do. And the way I like to do it is just loop a track and then preview different top loops. So we can hear that groove is really brought home by the fact that it's the same rhythm. Now it's like, world, hold on. Okay. I am going to be programming my own bongo loop in a minute, but I'm just going to show you how I like to work with loops. First thing is preview a bunch and then write down the ones you like. About 6 of them. So I just write them one against the other. For example, I might go, okay, I like this one. What's this one called? 063. Let's preview another. Don't like that one. Don't like that. Don't like that. Don't like that. Okay, that's kind of cool. So I'll go 033. And when I've done about 6 or 7 of those, I will then preview them against each other like this. Okay, which one's better out of these two? Okay, I like 63 more. And at that point, I will whittle it down. I will literally pitch them in a death match against each other until we get to the strongest one that I like the most. And at that point, I'm going to bring it in. You might layer up a couple of loops as well. I'll show you how to do that in a second. So we brought it in, cool. But what if you don't like every sound in that loop? Because I'm really listening out for the timbre of the sound more than anything else. So I don't need every sound in this loop. I don't want that clap because we've already got our clap. And the beauty of this is, in audio, you can just cut out the bits you don't want. And it might sound a bit weird. I don't want these fighting with the kick drum. And then you end up with this weird sound like that. Maybe I don't even want the open hat. So you end up with something that's really kind of chopped up and juddery. It sounds terrible on its own. Doesn't make any sense, right? Sounds like this. It's not really a loop, but when you bring it in under everything else, and this is going to allow you to have a really nice clean mix, because you're only taking the sounds that you actually want. Cool, so I'm going to layer one more loop under that, and I'm going to go for a shaker loop, so I'm just going to go shaker, and I might go for something from Splice. I should do it in the Splice app actually, because this is really difficult to navigate. Let's go for this one. Let's go for this one. That's not really right, but I don't want that fighting with the kick drum, so I'll get rid of those. I kind of like some of the other sounds in there. So we're just bringing up some of those high frequencies that the other loop was lacking. Hear the difference? Cool, so I'm just going to use that bit because that's what I like of it. So let's get rid of everything else. Lovely. Okay, let's get on to that wonderful arrangement. And then we're going to get into processing this as well. Now, as I've said, we're only taking the bits of the drums that we want. So that's how you can end up with a nice clean mix, because you're not layering up sounds that don't need to be layered. So when it does come to layering, you want to make sure that everything's there for a reason and everything is actually bringing something to the table. Otherwise, you can end up with a very busy track and a very mushed up mix, and I'm sure you know what that feels like, to have like 100 different tracks, but really you don't need that many, and we don't have many at all at the moment. Oh, and that's it. The last thing I wanted to show you on the drums was bring in this vinyl loop. So I mentioned earlier that we're going for that late 90s, early 2000 vibe, and a lot of DJing back then, believe it or not, for you youngsters out there, was done with vinyl records, and they had a really nice sound. I mean, that's what I learned to DJ on, and they just add a kind of warmth and crackle to it. So that might sound weird, and you say, well, why would I want to add noise to a track? But it really will just help warm it up. So if we listen to our drums, I'm just going to bring this up slowly. You want it to be subtle, but it will just add warmth to the whole track. And I'm going to add a little bit of room reverb. So this room reverb, and again, I know some of you have seen this before, is basically on an auxiliary channel. So we've got our routing in the drum rack. If we hit this little button, if you right click and create return chain, you can select a room reverb here if you created one. And then if you leave the S button highlighted, you can just feed out a little bit of each element to that room reverb if you want, if it tickles your fancy. So the hat. So that's off and that's on. I might tighten up that clap a little bit actually. Let's keep it tight. No, I preferred it before. Cool, okay. Next thing we've got on the magic list is that guitar riff, which we're going to tie into the arrangement. We've already covered a couple of points here that are important, and we're going to touch upon that sidechain trigger soon as well. So we go to the break section, and we're going to create that lovely guitar riff. Again, we're going to use the chords as our basis, our template, if you will. We don't need the bass in there. So let's create a guitar sound. Now, Calvin Harris uses an actual guitar, and it's going to sound better if you play something in live with a real instrument or work with someone who can do that. It's going to give it a more organic feel, but we can create an approximation here. So I'm going to go to packs. I'll look for nylon guitar, nylon. Let's see what we got. Yeah, that's cool. It's got that kind of 90s ATB type sound. A bit like, I can't even remember the name of the track. Not 9 PM Till I Come, it was a different track. Probably Quake or something like that, by a different artist. Anyway, stop rambling, Will. We are going to use these chords and we are going to play out more of an arpeggio. So we're going to play each note separately, one by one, and it's going to give us a really nice vibe. You could use an arpeggiator for this, but I prefer to do it manually. So let's grab these notes, take them in, and I want the rhythm to be eighths. So I don't know if this is the exact notes of the original track. I'll probably tweak it at some point, but let's have a listen. No, actually, there we go. So we can just repeat that 3-note loop. So you can decide which notes of those chords you want to play. And that's why I like not to use the arpeggiator. I like having the control over really being able to decide which notes I'm hitting. I like sustaining that B though. I think that works well. So then we've got this for the first two chords. And again, we'll go for this B. Actually, no, we'll drop that. Maybe we'll drop it. And then we'll go back to the B at the end. And that's going to kind of fight a little bit with the synths. It should, hopefully, if this sounds bad, create a bit of tension in there as well. So let's just bring that in, get those first notes. That one. So let's just copy those and then copy these. So we've got this effect. Add some room reverb. Actually, no, I do want it to go up there because it just hits the heart so lovely. And then I'm going to layer this as well, just to add a little bit of richness. And this layer is not going to be, well, we'll take the reverb off because we can group these together. So we've got layer 1 and we've got layer 2. And I just want to make this a slightly richer sound because it's such an important part of the track. It's like the main sound. So let's see what other sounds we've got. I don't know, I think it's going to be a bit tricky. I would usually use something like Contact, but I want to keep everything with an Ableton. So let's have a listen to this now. I'll try a couple of different sounds there. I think that's the same sound. Nice. And then the last thing I'm going to do is make sure that the low ends aren't fighting with the rest of the track. So I'm going to put an EQ on the group, just take out the low end. I'm going to add a little bit of saturation before the EQ because the saturation is going to add some extra harmonics. Tweak it a bit. I'm just crunching it up a bit. And then I'll add this really cool multi-band EQ, multi-band saturator. Just to bring out the high end a little bit. So we've gone this. Just add a little bit of brightness. Cool. And then we go into the chords, which can start off down low. Like that. Let's add some grunge to this because I want to add some of that warmth that comes from that older style of track as well because it was using real hardware synths. Okay, next thing we want to do is build out this break with a Reese bass. Now this is very common in a lot of styles of music, both back then and now as well. But you have a different kind of bass in the break. I'm getting rid of those chords because we don't need them anymore. That was just our template. So this Reese bass is basically just a sustained bass line. I totally do need those chords. What are you doing, Will? The reason I need them is because it's a sustained bass line, I can just quickly copy these and then it's done. And then let's just add that in to a clip, Reese bass. Oh, I've got some processing to show you and the strings as well and the 303. Right, let's do it. If you're enjoying this so far, give me a hell yeah or an amen, brother. If you're feeling holy, or don't, just write avocado. Let me know you're still watching. Something random. Give me an eggplant. No, don't do that. Okay. What? Right, Reese bass. I'm down with the lingo. Right, let's paste that in there. So a Reese bass is really just a sustained modulating bass line. So what I'm going to do is have that sustained bass like that, full volume all the time. Take out the high end. Drop it down a couple of octaves to the bass level. Add some unison. This bit's very important. And now we've got that lovely deep sound. Now you will get some phase cancellation here. As you can see, look at the levels. But in the break sections, this actually doesn't matter. It's on the drop that you don't want phase cancellation. And this can actually add more movement into the break sections. Going a bit in depth today, but it's nice, isn't it? Right. Let's add that reverb back in. A little bit of body to our guitar. Gain staging, so we're comparing a similar volume before to after. Otherwise our ears will get deceived because they tend to think that louder things sound better. So gain staging, part of the reason we do it is to match the levels going into a plugin as the same as going out, more or less, you know, to give yourself a fair likeness. Compare apples to apples, if you will. So now we've got this, what's next on the magic list, the mighty 303. So I'm going to copy the drop section. Don't sneeze, Will, don't sneeze. Let's bring everything over. And I'm going to show you what this sidechain trigger does as well, because this is going to be very important on the drop section. So if we have the drop happening here, let's get rid of that, don't need it. We've got this with everything in. Almost with everything. We're kind of clipping a bit here, so I'm going to turn this volume down on the output. Just to avoid this clipping. So nice. Okay, now I want to get that riff in. In fact, I'll do that before I show you the sidechain compression, because it's in my head, I think, the riff that he actually uses. And again, the easiest way to write a melody is choose the scale mode of the track you're working in. Hit template mode, like this. It's already done. Write in the rhythm on the root note of the track, which in this instance is the E, because we're in E minor. And just get the rhythm that you want. Because what we're trying to do is make it simpler to break down each element of sound and composition. So we've got rhythm, we've got pitch, we've got timbre, we've got the stereo field. If we can just simplify these things, it makes it easier for us to learn. Nice. Again, I'm looking for a rhythm that dances around the kick drum and the bass. And with a melody, very important for anything that you want to be memorable or singable, is that it's repetitive and simple enough to hum along if you're in the shower, for example. And we want repetition of rhythm and repetition of pitch shape. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm basically going to duplicate that. So we've got repetition of rhythm. And now let's change the pitches because we've already chosen the rhythm. Now it's not exactly the same as the track, but I'm just doing what I feel is going to work well. So that to me sounds cool. So now I can actually duplicate that new one because I've already changed the pitch. I'm going to listen to it through until I think it's going to get boring or need to change, and then I'll tweak either the rhythm a little bit at that point or the pitch. So let's have a listen through. I'm going to sustain these notes because I think they need to be sustained a little bit longer. And these ones too. So these notes I think need to follow the root of the track. Let's layer it. And I'm going to go epic. I'm going to go Santana at the end. I'm going to Santana the shit out of this melody at the end. So I'm using the inspiration, but I'm doing what I want to do. Because it's my channel, and I can do what I want. All right. Thank you. Cool. Okay, I'm going to add a little something that's not in the original track as well. I think this could do with a little bit of delay. Then we're going to get into the 303. Actually, I won't add delay. Oh, I love it. Okay, let's add the 303, what you've all been waiting for. I don't know if you've been waiting for it, but let's do it because I'm running out of time. I've still got stuff to show you on the magic list. Then we're going to listen to the finished result and go through all of the important points. Just recap on the 5 essential secrets of creating a catchy pop dance track. So 303, I would usually use third-party plugins to create a 303. But again, I wanted to do everything in Ableton. And the trick with a 303 acid line is usually it's going to be pretty simple and repetitive. You don't want something with a million different notes. It usually will be enhancing something that's already there. Or if it is the main element, again, it's going to hit a lot of the same notes, like in Higher State of Consciousness and Pawn Kings Up to No Good. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, what a tune. Right, so with this 303, what I'm going to do is basically jump the root note on the 16ths. This is a classic trance rhythm or pattern. So all I'm doing is going miss a 16th, root note, the E, up an octave to the E, down an octave to the E, miss a note, and repeat. So it's going to sound pretty basic, but we'll make it sound pretty absolutely amazing. So at the moment it's doing this. Well, that doesn't sound like a 303, Will. Correct, you passed the test. I applaud you and I respect you. First thing we want to do is make it monophonic. We don't want the notes bleeding into each other. So listen to the difference already. So it's going to be more like that. Now this is a pretty cool synth because I've actually found out that you don't really need to add distortion or drive. When you start pushing the resonance, it automatically adds some distortion and drive. So check this out. Now check it out. You can hear it distorting. Yeah, like that's sweet. Okay, yes, but there's one thing else I wanted to show you with this. You could hear it sounded pretty cool when it was opening up. Now I'm getting excited, see. So I'm going to go to MIDI effects. I'm going to go to, actually, no, I'll go to modulators. I'm going to throw this LFO on there. And I'm not sure if you still need to have Max for Live to access this, but I'm going to basically control a parameter that you can't really usually assign an LFO control to, low frequency modulator, but I am going to now be able to do it because I've got this LFO thing. So if I hit map, we can see it's going to be adding that pattern to that frequency control within the synth. So it's doing this basically. Right, listen to that. I'm being lasered by aliens. But if we turn it down, I go from being lasered to being introduced to probably one of the best sounds that man has ever known, which is a modulating 303. One of the best sounds. There are a couple of others that's pretty nice. That's pretty cool. So we can now have that running, and it's just going to add that extra intensity. And the last thing I want to add to this 303 is a little bit of cheeky delay. I like the echo, really. I think that's pretty nice. So, especially with a bit of ping pong delay. It just tickles the earbuds. Right, so we are ready for the sidechain compressor before we listen to all of this together. Now, I know most of you will already know what the sidechain compressor does, but if you're using Kickstart or Shaperbox or LFO Tool, anything like that, you'll know that it's just ducking the volume rhythmically, usually against the kick drum. So if you don't have any of those plugins, this is what they're mimicking. So if we put a compressor, which controls the dynamics of a sound, the volume of a sound, and hit this button here, we can choose to take an external input that's actually going to trigger that compressor rather than the main sound of going into the compressor. So at the moment, if we compress this sound, the bass, we can see that's how a compressor usually works. So we can control the dynamics of that sound. Now, if we choose a sidechain compressor, we can see the input is coming from somewhere else. Tick, 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 tick. So we can dance our own little jig, if you will. And this sidechain trigger track is just a really short, sharp rim shot that goes tick, 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 exactly the same timing as the kick. I've got it set to sends only, so you never actually hear that tick. It's just used to control this sidechain trigger. So I'm going to copy and paste that. In fact, firstly, I'm going to get those two basses grouped together. I'm not going to group the Reese bass into that because it's only happening in the break and we don't want it bouncing against the kick anyway. So it's just our whole bass track. We're going to... So we go from that to this, which allows the kick to pop through. Let's put that sidechain compressor on the guitar as well. Maybe the synth stabs, definitely. They're going to sound good with it. Not too much. We can kind of control the amount we dial in. And the guitar. I only want to do this very gently with the guitar. I found that putting it about the average level for lead synths and lead guitars, lead vocals is subtle, but actually it's just enough to help it dance a little bit rhythmically. Okay, so the last thing I want to add on this drop, actually three things. First is strings. Let's speed up, Will. We've taken long enough over this. I'm just going to go for, again, some strings that would be within Ableton. So go strings. I like this ensemble strings because they're nice and bright. And once again, we can use the chords as the template, strings, and then we've got this. And we can adapt it slightly. You know, we can add extra notes in there as well. Add some reverb. So nice. It's the simple things. Let's add a little bit of bounce. I know why that 303 isn't perfect yet. It's because we haven't coloured it the natural colour of synths. There we go. Absolutely perfect. Who'd have thought, eh? Now we can add a little bit of that sidechain bounce to the strings as well. And then just bring them up underneath, take out the low end because we don't really need anything fighting with the bass here. So with those strings, there's not much low end in there anyway. They sound so nice. We can have a little bit of a shelf to add a bit more sizzle and then just bring them up underneath. How much it fills everything out. Okay, next thing we want to do, what have I done? I've duplicated something, is get the vocals in there. So I'm going to use Splice for this. I'm actually considering developing a vocal pack at the moment because I know it's something a lot of you guys struggle with, is finding original vocals. But for the time being, something like Loop Cloud or Splice will give you some great vocals. You can even just use them as a placeholder, you know. So you can write the track and then you can replace them with some real vocals that you've had commissioned afterwards. So what I'm going to do is look for female vocal. I'm going to use E minor to help me find a vocal. But really, if you find a vocal in any minor key, you can transpose it and it's going to work, more or less. So now I'm going to listen out for something that I just think vibes with this. Yeah. That sounds nice already. I like that. Which one do I use? I like this one. I don't know what she's singing about, but I like the tone of her voice. I like the cut of your jib, lady, and that is enough for me. So I'm going to bring this in. Again, you can send this then to a singer and you can say, look, this is the vibe I'm going for. Can you write something that's going to work with this track? So you don't need to just stick with the vocals that you get from somewhere like Splice. And let's make sure it is warped correctly. So the original is 130 BPM. If we just play it and it's not warped, then it's not going to be in sync with our track. So we can see it's all out of sync. So make sure you warp it on Complex Pro. It's the best algorithm for vocals. And now it's all going to be warped perfectly. Oh, she keeps singing the same thing. All right, no, you're out. You've annoyed me. I thought you were going to go up at one point, which would have absolutely been amazing. So I'm going to bring this one in instead. 154. Ooh, this could sound a bit weird then because it's going to be quite a big change in tempo. Falling back in line, but nah, that works. But it's a little bit out of time, so I'm just going to bring the start position in a bit. Nice! In fact, what I'll do is I'll add a couple of cymbals and a build up, and you can download this project completely free with all the files and samples. So now I want to recap on those 5 secrets of creating pop house in this style. Then we're going to listen to the final result. Now these 5 points are really applicable to any style of music, but they're particularly pertinent when it comes to doing something that's more in the pop genres. But the first is to have a strong vibe or theme. So as we looked at Calvin's track, everything's kind of going towards that late 90s, early 2000s vibe. From the drum sounds, from the programming, from the composition, from the vocals used, everything about it is kind of going in the same direction, and that gives it a really strong vibe or theme. The second is to not overcomplicate your chord progressions, and this really does apply to any genre. Most dance music or pop music will have 3 or 4 chords in one chord progression and repeat it throughout. Yes, sometimes you might have a middle 8 and something might switch up sometimes, but generally speaking, if you're not really hot on music theory, and if you want to be, you can check out the link below, then just stick to 3 or 4 chords in one chord progression and use that that for your whole track. Nice. Number 3 is in this track, we cemented the rhythm of both the bass line with the synth chords as well. So by cementing those two things together, we have a really strong rhythmic foundation that's easy for people to dance to because we're not having too many interplaying rhythms. Of course, you need some because otherwise it's going to be very static, but that was a nice little trick I thought as well. Number 4 is the melodies. Melodies should be repetitive both in rhythm and in the shape of the pitch. We want it to be easy for people to remember because if something's memorable, then it's easy to remember. Number 5, and this is a real core element of what we teach in the Accelerator program and help people with, is we are going for simplicity on the other side of complexity. So when you start producing, you're making music that's really simple, but it doesn't sound good. Then you learn some new tips and tricks and you start using it, but not really in a very nuanced way. And you create things that are perhaps overcomplicated or a bit muddy. That's how you fall into that trap. But then what you get once you understand those tips and tricks and all these different methods is when you can draw from them like a tool box and use them to create something that sounds simple to the layman but has actually got a lot of nuance and detail behind it. So now let's listen to the finished result in 3, 2, 1, boom! So you would have heard that's actually quite similar to Calvin Harris's original track, and that's because of a fundamental way of referencing that we teach in the Accelerator, which has helped our students get to almost 250 million streams on Spotify. And if you apply it, you're going to be producing music that's much better, much faster, and that's more likely to get signed. So I'll put it together in this video here, but before you head over there, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I shall catch you over at that next video.